Hi folks, welcome to Finding Fuscata. I'm Sean. A few days ago I posted a video asking a question about some patterns that kept repeating in my life that I just couldn't figure out. And I received answers. I received answers from conversations that I had and from YouTube videos that showed up and from people that came into my life and some really amazing things. But the biggest thing was an aha moment, a realization that I had a few days ago. And that's what I want to share with you today. In order for you to understand this epiphany that I had, I think it would be helpful if I unpack a little bit of my worldview first. Many of you know that I was raised in the Christian church, and not in any one denomination particularly, but I was raised a little bit Baptist and a little bit fundamentalist and a little bit Pentecostal, and there was even some like Lutheran and Methodist thrown in there as well. So I had a fairly broad view of what Christianity was growing up, but predominantly from a Protestant point of view. And in that worldview, in that Christian worldview, there's the fundamental concept of the Holy Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In that Christian worldview, all three of those co-equal parts of the Trinity are all masculine. Now, we could get into why they're all masculine later, but that's, for the purposes of this video, we're not going to go down that road. But in that view, you've got the Father, which is the sort of the Godhead, the part that is all and sees all and, is from before the beginning of time and will go until after the end of time. And that's God the Father. And then you've got the Holy Spirit, which is the thing that kind of moves and breathes among all of us and influences us and gives us guidance. And that's the sort of the communication between God the Father and us as humans. And then you have the Son, which in Christianity is Jesus Christ, who came from heaven, was God in the flesh, and walked among us, and died, was crucified, and was buried and rose again on the third day, and then ascended into heaven. And so, in the Christian worldview, in a nutshell, that's kind of what the Trinity is. And there's a lot of issues and problems with that. A lot of people push back against it. And ironically, coming to understand that better is one of the reasons why I decided ultimately to leave the Christian church. My fundamental worldview uses that analogy of the Holy Trinity, but with a feminine aspect to it. So in my worldview, the Father, God the Father, is the masculine, the holy, sacred masculine. Holy Spirit is the feminine, the holy, sacred feminine. And the Son is humanity specifically, not just walking, living, breathing creatures that have consciousness, but humanity specifically. In some cases, you could expand that out to anything that has any kind of sentience, anything that has any kind of consciousness, that has a method that it can manipulate the world around it and receive feedback. That could be the Christ, the Son, in some ways, but for the purposes of what we're talking about, I'm just going to say like humanity specifically. And also, in my worldview, the Son, calling it the Son is not sexist, because to me, there is just humanity, and we have male ones and female ones, but in my worldview, like humanity has to do with entities here on the physical plane who can see the world around them and understand the world around them and have self-conceptualization, but then be able to manipulate the world around them with their hands, to be able to take an idea and take it and make something else and create something else from it, create whole civilizations, create technologies, create other humans. But it's that human has that same idea as manual, of manipulation, of using your hands to be able to do something. So it has to do with dexterity. It has nothing to do with the genders or the sexes or anything like that. It's just humanity. So when I say man or mankind, I don't mean it to be a sexist. I mean it to mean like human beings, inclusive of both the masculine one, or the male ones and the female ones, the masculine ones and the feminine ones. It's just humanity as a collective, as a whole. Okay. So take that whole thing and put it in a bucket over here, and then we'll come back to it in a minute. Going back to my other video, the question I posed was why my life never seemed to change regardless of what I did, and why these certain patterns kept showing up in my life. And specifically, the pattern was that I was always, specifically the pattern in my life has been, financially speaking, that I've always been given just enough for me to get by, to have a roof over my head and the power turned on and food in my belly and, a car in the driveway. And, I've always had all the things that I need to be able to live my life and to go out into the world and make a living and, do all the things. But I've never been able to break through into any kind of abundance. Now, you could look at my life and say that I do live an abundant life. I mean, I'm a middle-aged white guy living in the United States in 2024. I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. I mean, by almost any measure in the world. But the way that we have our culture set up is there's still that sense of enslavement. There's still that sense of being bound. And that's the thing I've never been able to get free from. And what ends up happening in my life is that the pattern that I saw in my life is that I'd accumulate some debt, and then I would get that debt paid off, and then I would save up some money, and then when I got to a certain savings level, everything would come crashing down, something catastrophic would happen, and I would be back in debt all over again and have to start the process all over. So, and I noticed this happen several times in my life, and so what I decided to do, normally I would get a second job or raise some extra money and just keep doing that over and over again, but I didn't want to do it because I started to see, based on the mirror principle, that whatever you see on the outside of you is a reflection of what's on the inside. And if I kept seeing that pattern, then that meant something on the inside of me needed to be changed. So that's kind of the Cliff Notes version of that. But then another thing that would happen along with that cycle is anytime there was a need, like a real need, not just a desire, not like a desire for a new car or a new TV or something like that, but the story that I often tell is about my cat needed medical attention. And I had a windfall of money that was exactly the amount of money to cover my medical expenses for my cat. And that's the kind of thing that happened to me just over and over and over and over and over again. And I used to get so frustrated with it. Until a couple of years ago when I decided to, flip the script, decided to do the internal work, decided to change who I am, to deal with the shadows, to do my integration work, to, go through coaching, to do all this kind of work that I'm doing now. Anyway, so that's kind of the Cliff Notes. That's the Cliff Notes of my worldview, and that's the Cliff Notes of the scenario that was going on. So you've got my worldview over here in one bucket, and take that brief synopsis of the scenario and put it over here in this bucket. Okay, now you get your buckets full, all right? So a little while ago, I did an interview with a lady named Whitney Riley. And it ended up not being an interview, but more of an impromptu guided meditation session where she took me back to one of my earliest childhood memories and helped me unpack that and change it from the core story of my limiting beliefs to becoming part of the core story of my empowering beliefs. And that's part of the thing that started to unfold for me. But as I have been contemplating the meditation work that I did with her, and I would encourage you to go and watch or listen to that episode, because we go into a lot of detail about these things that I'm talking about. Over the last several days, weeks, I've been just deeply meditating on that and trying to unravel what I saw and unravel what I heard and find ways that I can take those lessons and integrate them into my life so that I can, change my inner perception so that the mirror of the world will reflect back to me something that is, the version of the world that I think that I am, the version of the world that I would prefer to live in. Okay. And I was driving down so last week, this is where this story gets a little more interesting. Last week, I decided to go back to church. My daughter has been asking a lot of questions about Jesus and God, and I have some concerns about the way that the world is going. And so my initial reaction when I don't always know how to handle things is to say, well, maybe we'll go back to the church. And is it the right thing to do? Probably not, but that was the decision that I made. So I decided to go back to the church that I had gone to for a long time, the place where I met my wife, where we got married, where her folks still go to that church. And I'd had a lot of really powerful, meaningful experiences when I went to that church. And when I went there, I was both surprised and not surprised by the message that the pastor gave, because it was full of lies and half-truths and misconceptions, and there was like this loud blinking subtext throughout the whole message that I don't know how anybody could have missed it, but it was just glaring. The whole message was, be afraid of Muslims. Muslims are always going to want to kill you, and Muslims will always hate Jews, and we need to support the Jews, and the only way to do that is to vote for Donald Trump. In Jesus' name, amen. Like that was, he never said any of those words, but that was like, if there was a ticker going underneath, like you have it on news channels where like the subtitles going, that's what would have been the message, just running over and over and over and over and over again. And I thought, oh yeah, okay, that's why I don't do this anymore. But while this pastor that was speaking isn't the same pastor who was there when I regularly attended the church, the former pastor was this gentle, sweet, kind man who had been doing this for 30 odd years. And when you speak to him, when I would listen to him speak on Sundays, or when I'd have conversations with him, or counseling sessions with him, or whatever it was, there's this just tremendous sense of gentleness about him that I always found, I don't want to say appealing, but it was something that I aspired to, I'll say. Because this was a man who spent a lot of time in prayer and contemplation, who deeply loved the people in his church, who deeply loved the ministry, who deeply loved God, and that was his fundamental core motivation. And he retired a few years ago, and other pastors have taken over the church. But he was there that Sunday when I went, And I bumped into him and I said hi, because when you start church, there's a little place where you can get coffee and, kind of mingle and stuff like that before the service starts. And I just said, hey, Pastor Marty, how you doing? And, he like vaguely remembered me, but, I think he was just glad that somebody was being polite to him, but he was having conversations with other folks, But what got me thinking about that was, what it got me thinking about was a story that he used to tell on a regular basis. He had a little granddaughter, a little blonde-haired little girl, was a toddler. And he used to tell a story of how he would take her to the mall and get her some ice cream. And then he would just enjoy spending some time with his granddaughter. Just this cute little toddler, maybe 3 years old, 2.5, 3 years old, something like that. Not really good at walking yet. Not really understanding the world yet. And he'd get her an ice cream cone. And so, this little tiny person, even with a small ice cream cone, it looks like this massive, there's a huge ice cream cone to have to process. And he would let her walk around the mall with her, her little legs and her big head and her giant ice cream cone, and just kind of absorbed into that, and then looking at the world and not really understanding what's happening in the world or what's going on, or being fascinated with this other thing and then being fascinated with that thing over there, and just wandering this way and wandering that way and not understanding the dangers that are around her. And then he, as their grandfather, would walk behind her and want her to be able to explore the world, to find things out, to learn things, to find her boundaries and do all that kind of stuff, but then also not do it in an unsafe way. But then also not let her know that he was totally right there behind her, like guiding her and keeping her, so if she was about to fall into a fountain, he'd just kind of, keep his hand there and push her back a little bit. Or if she was about to walk into a crowd of people that were, coming this way, he'd kind of, guide her back a little bit, off of that path. Or if she was about to come to an escalator, he'd, encourage her maybe around it, and just to kind of keep her safe, so that she was just toddling around this world and, could be safe and could enjoy her ice cream. And that image kept coming to mind all week long. And then, this is probably 2 days ago, I was driving to Lowe's. No, I wasn't. I was driving to Home Depot to go get some screws or something on a project I was working on. And it clicked. I understood the thing that I'd been missing. Hi folks, Sean here. Excuse the interruption. I want to ask a favor of you if I can. I know you don't owe me anything, but hear me out. Finding Fuscata has been a dream of mine for a long time. And for many, many years, when I was in the military and even as a civilian, I struggled with a lot of limiting beliefs that held me back from doing the things that I knew that I was supposed to be doing. And when I overcame those limiting beliefs, I was able to start flourishing and growing, and I'm branching out into new areas, and my life is really, really changing. And what I want to do with Finding Fuscata is to take those lessons that I've learned and share them with you, so that you can do this too, because it's an amazing world out there once you get past some of these limiting beliefs and once you understand your true capabilities in life. But to do that, I need your support. So if you would, consider like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow along, hit the bell for notifications, and definitely get involved in the discussions in the comments. And I would also encourage you to go take a look at school.com. That's SKOOL.com /Finding Fuscata. There's a Finding Fuscata. And there I'm building a community of people who have been on a journey of spiritual awakening, or they're recovering from religion, or they are just generally seeking truth, or they're frustrated with, they're trying to learn manifestation practices, but things just aren't working, and they've been to coach after coach after coach and stuff just isn't happening. Because that's the journey that I went on. So what we're doing over there is we're having very deep conversations about how these things work and what it's all about. And it's a great community that I would encourage you to join. I'm only asking $1 a month right now, and that's mostly to keep out the riffraff and to make sure that you're not a bot. But if you object to that, or if you can't for whatever reason, then by all means reach out to me and I can get you into the program anyway. Because the point isn't to make a cajillion dollars. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to get this message out to people, to help people's lives improve and to help them move on to the next level the way that I did. So if you're interested in that, if you'd like to join me on this journey, I welcome you. And I thank you for your support. Thank you for the time. Now, let's get back to the conversation. And I got this overwhelming feeling of just love and compassion and protection and supply and nurturing, and just all those amazing feelings came rushing back to me all at once. And what it was, if you haven't guessed, is that for a long time in my life, I have been not following my calling. I have been not doing the things that I know that I need to be doing in life. I've been walking my own path. Because from the time I was a young person, I had a calling to go into some kind of ministry, to be somebody in the world who could help and teach and help people grow and learn and explain spiritual concepts and explain things to people so they could live better lives. But I didn't want to do it. I had guilt and I had shame and I had feelings of unworthiness and all these other sorts of things that kept me away from doing that and not wanting to do the one thing that I knew that I should be doing. And I've come to deeply believe that my life has been chaotic, and I've had to deal with addictions and divorces and broken relationships with friends and families and my children and all those things in my life that I've had to deal with because I was never able or willing to submit to the thing that I knew that I should be doing because I was so afraid. And now, in my life, I've come to a point where I'm just not afraid anymore. Where I feel like the stakes are too high for me to be silent. The world is going to a time when people need to understand some of these sorts of things. And even if I am only, that last little who in Whoville from Horton Hears a Who, like, finally rings that last little bell. And it's enough for, the kangaroos to hear what Horton was hearing this whole time. They can save that whole civilization. Even if it's just that, if I'm that one little last voice that saves that one little last person to flip our consciousness and get us to start seeing the world differently, then I have to do that. That's the thing that I'm called for. That's why I'm making these videos. That's why I'm telling you these stories. But the epiphany that came over me was that image of this loving grandfather guiding his toddler. Through the mall and helping her navigate, and she didn't really know what was going on, and she's like, she's this little child, and she's like willful and defiant, but then cute and cuddly and great, and because all toddlers are willful and defiant, and he wanted her to understand the world, and he wanted her to not be like forced into anything, but then to also be safe. And I keep thinking like all those times when I had a windfall, all those that covered an expense, all those times that I got so mad, I would get so frustrated. And all those times I was just like provided for. Even though, I was always allowed to kind of fall into debt, and I was allowed to, but it never got so bad. It never got that bad. It was always, kind of manageable. And I just suddenly got this image of like this father. Remember, go back to the bucket in the beginning where I have like Father, Mother, God the Father, Spirit, and Son, with God being the masculine and Spirit being the feminine. But those holy, sacred parents, that sacred masculine and that sacred feminine, just being there and keeping me safe and never letting me wander too far and never letting me just go like over a cliff completely. And then I think about all those times in my life when I've been able to be a blessing to other people, and I've been able to help other people, come back from the edge. And I feel so thankful for it now. And I feel so thankful for that love. And for the protection and for the guidance and for always just being there and catching me. And never letting me fall, never letting me go over the edge, never let me go too far, and always providing the resources while I was still being stubborn, while I was still not willing to, submit and do this work that I'm doing now. So, here's a message to you, though. Whatever you're going through, there's a fundamental question that Einstein wanted answered. Somebody asked him, Albert, my buddy Al, E=mc² and all that stuff. Somebody once asked him if he could come back in 500 years, if there was an answer to a question, what would it be? And I know I'm paraphrasing all this, but he would want to know if the universe was fundamentally friendly. And it's hard for me to say if the universe per se is fundamentally friendly or if it's fundamentally loving, because there's a very real sense in which the universe is just fundamentally mathematical. And it's just, you put input in and you get input out, and it's just a cycle of reverberation and vibrations and all that kind of stuff. And it's so easy to just think of it as just being this cold, just a mathematical thing that we go through. And in some senses it is. It's a very manipulable thing that we live in. But at the same time, there's something about it that is loving and is gracious. and is kind and does protect you and does provide for you and wants you to do things and wants you to take that, the love and the caring and the nurturing that you feel, and bring it forward into the world and share it with other people. And maybe it's not like what I'm doing, where I have this passion for people and I want to see people like grow and improve and live and be free. And maybe your thing is that, I don't know, maybe you're like a tremendous basketball player, or maybe you're a tremendous airline pilot, or maybe you're a great mom, or maybe you're a painter of, houses, not art, but like, I don't know. But I just want to encourage you right now that whatever that thing is that you know that you should be doing that you're not doing, just start doing it. Because the world needs whatever it is that you have to offer. We're living in a time when it's so easy to pull back and get sucked into, social media and get into doom scrolling or get into our own heads or get wrapped up in our addictions and that seems like how the world is now. But I just want to encourage you, even if it's not something where you think you want to contribute, like even if it's like something that you know that you shouldn't be doing, like for me with my alcoholism, I just got to a point where I was like, I'm not a drinker anymore. So let me frame it this way. I'm going to leave you with this thought too. I was a heavy smoker for a long time. And I was a heavy drinker for a long time. But what I did to quit smoking was I just changed my identity to someone who's not a smoker. When I would start to get the temptation to have a cigarette, I would just say to myself, no, you're not a person who smokes. I'm just not a person who smokes anymore. And then once I made that shift, within 2 days, I just stopped smoking. I'm like, I'm just not a smoker. I just choose to not do that. Because quitting smoking is the easiest thing in the world. You just don't light the next one. That's it. There's no trick. You just say, oh, I'm just not a person who smokes. And that's it. Just make that identity shift. Sounds easy, and it is easy. To take a little while to build up to it, but there you go. There's my quitting smoking advice. And it's the same thing with alcohol, where it's just a poison. It's a poison that comes in a pretty bottle. And so you're just paying for the pretty bottles and the cool labels, and because it tastes like ass, it's really, really disgusting. And unless it's just loaded with sugar, but there's still that underlying, flavor to it. And one day I was just like, you know what? I'm just not a person who drinks. I identify as someone who doesn't drink. And that was it. And then I stopped. And up until a few days ago, I was someone who doubted whether the universe was fundamentally loving. I was someone who was on the fence of whether there's a God and what religion is right and who, like, all that cacophony of silliness, and I just wasn't sure. And I wasn't sure why my life always went the way that it did, and I thought maybe I wasn't worthy, or I don't know. I didn't have any clarity on that. But today, I'm just someone who my identity is that I live in a loving universe. And I'm just someone that the universe takes care of. I'm just someone that the universe has my back. And I'm someone that the universe wants me to be free and loving and to help other people get free. And that's what I am. That's what I am now. Anyway, I hope this finds you well. I hope that you're being kind. I hope that you are choosing to understand rather than to be understood. I hope that you are choosing forgiveness over vengeance. And I hope that you are turning inside and looking for love and looking for the wounded places and healing them. I hope that you're doing that. And I hope that you have a good week. And I will not see you later because I'm just looking at a camera, but you'll see me. Thank you very much.